Scott barely had time to flinch before the burning liquid scalded his skin. The coffee was fresh, straight from the pot, and it hit his cheek and neck like molten lava. The pain was instant, searing, but what shocked him more wasn't the heat. It was the woman who threw it. Amanda stood over him, her face twisted in pure rage, gripping the empty mug like she was about to smash it over his head next. "Give Kyle your goddamn credit card, or get out," she screamed, her voice so sharp it cut through the air like a blade. Scott sat frozen at the breakfast table, the room eerily silent except for the drip 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 of coffee sliding down his shirt. His first instinct was to reach for a napkin, to wipe away the mess, to cool his burning skin. But then he looked up at Amanda, at his wife, at the woman who had just assaulted him over her useless brother, and something inside him snapped. Kyle, sitting at the other end of the table, didn't even flinch. He didn't look concerned. He didn't try to defend Scott. He just smirked like a lazy parasite who expected to be fed. "He's family, Scott," Amanda continued, her breath heaving like she had just run a marathon of entitlement. "He's had a tough year. And all you do is sit on your selfish ass with your precious business and your precious money like it's all just yours. You owe him." Scott slowly stood up. He could feel the coffee soaking into his collar, feel the heat still lingering on his skin. For years, he had let things slide. The snide remarks, the passive-aggressive insults, the demands, the expectation that his hard work wasn't really his, that somehow, by marrying Amanda, he had also signed a contract to provide for her entire damn family. But this was the last straw. Amanda's face was flushed, but there was no regret in her eyes. No apology. No shock at what she had just done. Only arrogance. She really thought he was going to give in. "You're gonna sit there and act like I'm the bad guy?" she scoffed, folding her arms. "Newsflash, Scott, this is what marriage is. You support your wife's family. If you don't like it, then get the hell out of my house." Scott's fingers clenched into fists. Her house. The words echoed in his mind like a warning bell. His house. His name on the mortgage. His money that bought every single damn thing inside these walls. The furniture? His. The appliances? His. The car she drove to work every morning, pretending to be some corporate hotshot while spending his money like water? His. And she had just told him to get out. "Fine," Scott said, his voice calm. Too calm. Amanda blinked. For the first time, something flickered in her expression. "What?" Scott turned on his heel and walked away. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just walked. Straight to the bathroom, where he splashed cold water on his burned skin. Straight to the bedroom, where he grabbed his phone. Straight to his home office, where he made one very important call. Amanda thought she had one. She thought she had broken him. But what she didn't know was that Scott never argued. Scott acted. Scott sat in his home office, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. His burned cheeks still stung, but the fire inside him burned hotter. His fingers moved fast, pulling up the number he had saved for months, a number he never thought he'd have to use. He pressed dial. "Mr. Parker," a smooth voice answered after 2 rings. "I was wondering when I'd be hearing from you." Scott exhaled slowly, gripping the phone. "Is the paperwork ready?" "Ready and waiting," the man replied. "Once you sign, everything is in motion." Scott's eyes flicked to the file drawer across the room. Inside, neatly stacked, were the documents that would change everything. The ones that would take away everything Amanda thought she owned. The house, gone. The car, gone. The life she had built on his back, using his money, while treating him like an ATM, gone. But he wasn't just walking away. No, that was too easy. He was going to make her watch it all disappear. Scott hung up and took a deep breath. There was no hesitation now. He stepped out of the office and moved with quiet precision. He grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, stuffing in only the essentials: passport, laptop, some clothes. He wouldn't be staying here another night. Then, he went to work. The expensive TV, unplugged and wheeled out to his truck. The designer furniture she loved to show off to her friends, loaded piece by piece. The kitchen appliances, the espresso machine she couldn't live without, gone. Scott wasn't taking revenge. He was taking what was his. An hour later, the house was a shell of what it once was. Everything of value, everything he paid for, was packed up and gone. The only things left? Amanda's cheap, gaudy decorations, her bargain bin clothes, the useless junk she bought on impulse, thinking it made her look wealthy. Scott stood in the empty living room, staring at the bare walls. It was almost poetic. Then, as the final touch, he took out his keys and placed a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, the finalized paperwork, the sale of the house. By the time Amanda came home, she wouldn't just find an empty house. She'd find a stranger living in it. Scott took one last look around, feeling nothing but satisfaction. Then, he walked out, locked the door behind him, and disappeared into the night. Scott drove in silence, gripping the wheel as the weight of his decision settled over him, not with doubt, but with a sense of finality. This wasn't just some impulsive reaction to Amanda's latest outburst. This was the culmination of years of manipulation. For too long, he had let things slide. He had made excuses, convinced himself that she would change, that she would grow out of her entitlement, that one day she would see him as more than just a walking wallet. But today, she had made it clear. She didn't love him. She didn't respect him. He was just a source of income. And the second he refused to comply, she turned violent. Scott exhaled slowly, his heart beating steadily as he pulled into a storage facility on the outskirts of town. The place was nearly empty at this hour, just how he wanted it. He backed his truck up to a private unit, got out, and started unloading. One by one, he secured his belongings inside. The furniture, the electronics, the valuables, everything that had made that house a home. Except now, it wasn't his home. Not anymore. By the time Amanda walked through that front door, the reality would hit her like a freight train. Scott locked the storage unit, double-checking the security before heading back to his truck. His next stop? His lawyer. It was time to seal the deal. Meanwhile, Amanda stormed into her office, still fuming. Her hands were shaking with rage as she typed out a furious text to Scott, but halfway through, she deleted it. No. Let him stew. He'd come crawling back. He always did. He was weak. He needed her. She smirked, sipping the replacement coffee her assistant had just brought her. Scott would sulk for a few hours, maybe even spend the night at a hotel to make some pathetic little statement. And tomorrow? He'd apologize. He always did. But what Amanda didn't know was that, at that very moment, Scott was signing the final documents, the ones that ensured that when she stepped foot in that house tonight, she wouldn't have a home to return to. The moment Scott's pen scratched across the final signature line, it was done. The house gone. His bank accounts secured. Amanda erased from his life like a bad investment. His lawyer, Mr. Parker, leaned back in his chair, flipping through the signed papers with a satisfied nod. Well, Mr. Thompson, he said, sliding the documents into a neat folder, as of this moment, your wife has exactly zero claim to your assets. The house was legally yours alone, and the sale went through this morning. By tonight, the new owner will have full rights to the property. Scott smirked. Perfect. Parker chuckled. I've handled a lot of divorces, but this is brutal. Scott shrugged, standing up and adjusting his jacket. She made her choice. Now, she lives with it. He shook Parker's hand, grabbed the folder with his new lease agreement for an upscale condo downtown, and walked out of the office without looking back. He wasn't just leaving a house. He was walking away from a toxic, parasitic life. Amanda barely glanced at the time when she left work. Kyle had texted her 3 times already, demanding to know if Scott had come to his senses and coughed up the credit card. She rolled her eyes. Of course, he hadn't. Scott liked to pretend he was some kind of silent warrior, so dramatic, always acting like he was the victim. She had to break him down sometimes, remind him of his place. He was the provider. Her provider. And tonight, she was going to make damn sure he remembered that. She pulled into the driveway, Kyle's beat-up car already parked outside. He was sitting on the hood, scrolling through his phone, expecting a free dinner. Amanda didn't even bother greeting him before unlocking the front door. She shoved it open, already opening her mouth to yell at Scott, and froze. The house was empty. Completely. The couch? Gone. The TV? Gone. The dining table? Gone. Even the damn curtains were missing. For a second, Amanda's brain refused to process what she was seeing. She stumbled forward, her heels clicking against the bare hardwood floors, her hands running over the walls as if touching them would somehow make the furniture reappear. Where the hell is everything? Kyle muttered behind her. Amanda stormed into the kitchen, searching for any sign of Scott. That's when she saw it. A single white envelope on the counter. Her hand shook as she picked it up, tearing it open in one frantic motion. Inside was one piece of paper. The finalized sale of the house. The house she had just walked into. Wasn't hers anymore. No. 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 And no. She shrieked, flipping the paper over like she had missed something, like this was some kind of joke. It wasn't. And that's when a voice, asterisk asterisk a deep, unfamiliar voice, asterisk asterisk spoke behind her. Ma'am, the man said, his tone firm but professional, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Amanda spun around. Standing in the middle of the empty living room was a tall man in a sharp black suit, holding a folder under one arm. A real estate agent. Or worse, the new owner. This property was sold earlier today, he continued, flipping open his folder and glancing down. Scott Thompson finalized the paperwork this afternoon. As of now, you're trespassing. Amanda's stomach dropped. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Kyle sputtered, stepping forward. Hey, you can't just throw us out. This is her house. The man barely looked up from his folder. No, it's not. Amanda's breath came in short gasps. She reached for her phone, fingers trembling as she scrolled to Scott's number. She hit dial and froze. A robotic voice played through the speaker. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Amanda felt her blood turn to ice. Scott wasn't just gone. He had erased himself completely. Amanda's hands clenched around her phone, her knuckles turning white. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. She turned on the real estate agent, her voice rising to a shriek. There's been a mistake. This is MY House. The man barely blinked. He reached into his folder and calmly pulled out a document, turning it toward her like she was some confused customer at a bank. The house was solely owned by Mr. Scott Thompson, he said, his tone maddeningly neutral. It was sold earlier today. The new owner officially takes possession now. He snapped the folder shut. So, I'll need you to collect any personal belongings and leave immediately. Kyle let out a barking laugh. You're joking, right? This is some kind of scare tactic? He can't just sell the house out from under her. The man's expression didn't change. He did. Amanda felt nausea rising in her throat. Her mind spun wildly, scrambling for a solution. Scott he couldn't do this. Could he? Her hand shook as she typed out a text, her nails tapping the screen in a frenzy. Amanda. Where are you? What did you do? She had sinned. A few seconds later, the message turned green. Not delivered. Her breath caught in her chest. No. 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 Scott had blocked her. Kyle peered over her shoulder. What's wrong? Amanda swallowed, forcing her face into something close to composure. He must be at a hotel. This is a stunt, that's all, she muttered, more to herself than to Kyle. But even as she said it, a cold, slithering doubt wrapped around her spine. Scott didn't pull stunts. He acted. And this wasn't just some petty revenge. This was a total annihilation. Kyle scoffed, stepping forward. All right, buddy, let's cut the crap. Where's the furniture? What did he do with the TV? The real estate agent didn't even blink. I assume Mr. Thompson took whatever was purchased with his money. Anything left behind is yours. You can take it now before you go. Kyle let out a furious snort. There's nothing left. The man just nodded. Then I suppose you have nothing to pack. Amanda's vision went red. This wasn't happening. This was a bad dream, a mistake, a misunderstanding. Scott wasn't capable of this. He was the quiet, obedient husband. The man she controlled. The man who took the abuse and always came back. Wasn't he? The real estate agent checked his watch. I'm going to have to insist you leave now. Amanda's stomach twisted. Carl shot her a look, his lips curling in annoyance. Well? Call your lawyer. Fix this. Amanda's pulse pounded in her ears. She didn't have a lawyer. Why would she? The house was hers. Scott was hers. She owned him, didn't she? She fumbled with her phone, scrolling, trying to find someone, anyone who could fix this. A number flashed on her screen. Her mother. She hesitated. No. If she called her now, she'd be admitting she had lost. And Amanda never lost. Her jaw clenched as she straightened her spine. No. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. She just needed to find Scott. Because if he thought he could walk away from her this easily, he was dead wrong. Scott sat in his new condo, sipping a glass of whiskey as he looked out over the city skyline. The complete silence was almost surreal. No shouting. No demands. No Kyle lurking around like a damn stray dog looking for a handout. For the first time in years, he could breathe. His phone sat face down on the table. Not a single notification. Because Amanda? She didn't have his number anymore. She could scream, curse, cry, whatever she wanted. It didn't matter. She was nothing to him now. Scott smirked, leaning back in his chair. She was probably losing her damn mind right about now. And she was. Amanda ripped open drawers, through open closet doors, searching for something, anything, to prove this was a mistake. A contract. A receipt. Some proof that Scott hadn't just vanished with everything. But there was nothing. Only the house she used to own and the realization sinking in like a knife in her chest. He had planned this. For months. Scott wasn't just some weak, spineless idiot who rolled over and took it. He had been watching, waiting, setting up the perfect moment to strike. Carl sat on the floor, scrolling through his phone. Well, this is just fantastic. So, what now? Where are we sleeping tonight? Amanda's blood boiled, like she owed him an answer. She turned on him, her face twisted in rage. You think I planned this? You think I knew that son of a bitch would? Her words cut off as a new thought slammed into her mind. Kyle wasn't her problem. Scott was. And she was going to find him. Amanda yanked her phone out of her pocket and stormed out of the house. Kyle scrambled to his feet. Hey, where the hell are you going? She didn't answer. Because she already knew exactly where to start. Scott's office. Scott's employees were wrapping up for the day when Amanda barged into the office. Heads turned. People stared. She didn't care. She stormed through the open workspace, past confused-looking receptionists, her heels slamming against the polished floors. Straight to Scott's private office. She didn't knock. She kicked the door open. And froze. The office was empty. No desk. No chair. No pictures on the walls. Nothing. Even the damn nameplate was missing. Amanda's stomach twisted into knots. Scott's assistant, a woman named Lisa, strolled in behind her, arms crossed. You're trespassing, Lisa said casually. Amanda whipped around, seething. Where is he? Lisa shrugged. No idea. He sold the company last week. Amanda's heart stopped. What? Lisa smirked. Yeah. New management took over yesterday. The company's still running. But Scott? He's gone. Amanda felt the floor drop out from under her. He had sold his business, too? He wasn't just leaving her. He was erasing his entire life. Amanda swallowed hard. Tell me where he is. Lisa let out a mocking laugh. Oh, sweetheart. If Scott doesn't want to be found, you're never finding him. Amanda saw red. This wasn't just some revenge stunt. Scott had played the long game. And he had won. Amanda stormed out of Scott's former office, her heels stabbing the pavement as she marched toward her car. This wasn't possible. Scott wasn't smart enough for this. For years, he had been predictable, silent, obedient, easy to manipulate. And now? He had outmaneuvered her. No. She refused to accept it. Amanda slid into the driver's seat and gripped the wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. She had one last card to play. Scott could hide, but he wasn't invincible. She tapped her phone screen, scrolled through her contacts, and pressed call. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Hello, Amanda. Amanda clenched her jaw. Her mother. The only person more ruthless than she was. I need help, Amanda said, keeping her voice steady. A short pause. Help? Her mother repeated, amusement laced in her tone. Amanda exhaled sharply. Scott left. He sold the house, took everything, and disappeared. Silence. Then, her mother laughed. Laughed. Oh, sweetheart, she purred. He finally got tired of your bull's asterisk tea, didn't he? Amanda's stomach twisted. Don't bother, her mother cut in. I warned you. You push a man too far, and eventually he pushes back. Amanda's pulse pounded in her ears. She had expected support, not this. You think this is funny? She snapped. I have nothing. He took everything. Her mother sighed. You did that to yourself. You bled him dry for years, Amanda. Did you really think he'd let it go on forever? Amanda gritted her teeth. Fine, she spat. If you won't help me, I'll handle it myself. Oh, I'm sure you will, her mother said, amused. But tell me, Amanda, what exactly do you have left to fight with? Amanda opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because for the first time in her life, she had nothing. No house. No money. No control. And Scott? He was gone. For the first time in her life, Amanda felt fear. Amanda gripped the steering wheel, her mother's words still ringing in her ears. What exactly do you have left to fight with? The answer? Nothing. Her stomach twisted into knots. She had always been the one in control. She dictated the rules, called the shots, and Scott? He had been her safety net. But now? She was free falling. She clenched her jaw, her mind racing. No. She refused to be a victim. She wasn't going to let Scott win. She needed a plan. She needed leverage. Amanda tapped at her phone again, this time calling someone else, a last resort. Kyle. It rang. Once. Twice. Then. What do you want? Amanda exhaled sharply. We need to find Scott. Kyle snorted. And do what? Beg for our stuff back? Face it, Mandy, the guy played us. He's gone. Amanda's grip tightened. Not yet. He's not. Kyle let out a bitter laugh. Look, I'd love to get my free ride back, but the guy covered his tracks. You don't think I tried tracking him down? Amanda's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Kyle hesitated, just for a second. Then his voice lowered. I went to his usual bank. Wanted to see if I could pull something, you know? But guess what? His accounts are cleared out. Everything moved. Like he knew we'd go looking. Amanda's pulse spiked. He had cut them off completely. She swallowed hard, pushing down the panic clawing at her chest. Kyle sighed. Face it, he's erased us. You can throw your little tantrum all you want, but we're screwed. Amanda stared blankly at the empty street ahead of her. Erased. No money. No house. No Scott. A sudden, horrible thought crept into her mind. What if she really had lost everything? Her breathing quickened. No. 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 This wasn't over. Scott thought he had one. But he had one weakness. A crack in his armor. Amanda's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smirk. She had spent years controlling him, and nobody walks away from her without consequences. Scott wanted to disappear? Fine. She'd drag him back into the light, whether he wanted it or not. Scott sat in his condo, feet propped up on the coffee table, watching the city lights flicker below. The whiskey in his glass barely moved as he swirled it, his mind uncharacteristically calm. He had won. For the first time in years, he was truly, blissfully free. No Amanda. No Kyle. No endless demands. Just peace. A small vibration on the table caught his attention. His burner phone. Only a handful of people had this number, his lawyer, his financial advisor, and one other person. Scott picked it up, smirking when he saw the name. Lisa. He answered. Tell me she lost it, he said, his voice even but amused. Lisa laughed. Oh, boss. You should have seen it. I've never seen someone go through the 5 stages of grief so fast. Scott let out a low chuckle. She stormed in like a damn hurricane, Lisa continued. Thought she could demand answers. But when I told her you sold the company, you should have seen her face. I think she almost fainted. Scott took a slow sip of whiskey. Good, he murmured. Lisa hesitated. But she's not backing down. Scott's smirk faded. She's desperate, Lisa continued. And desperate people? They do stupid things. Scott sighed, running a hand down his face. You should have known. Amanda wasn't just going to accept defeat. She was going to lash out. Keep an eye on her, he muttered. Lisa hummed in agreement. Already on it. But Scott? I've seen this type before. She's not done. Scott leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He knew that. He'd known it the second he walked out of that house for the last time. Amanda wasn't the type to let go. And if she couldn't find him, she'd try to destroy him. But Scott wasn't the same man she used to control. This time, he was ready. Amanda sat in her car, fingers tapping furiously against the steering wheel, her mind running at full speed. Scott had covered his tracks well. Too well. His bank accounts? Wiped. His business? Sold. His number? Gone. But Amanda wasn't stupid. Men like Scott didn't just disappear. They left breadcrumbs. She just had to find them. Her eyes flicked to the time on her phone. 9:47 p.m. It was late, but not too late for one last shot. She scrolled through her contacts and pressed call. It rang once. Twice. Then, a tired voice answered. Do you have any idea what time it is? Amanda ignored the annoyance in his tone. Eric, I need a favor. Eric sighed. Amanda, I'm not getting in the middle of your marital problems. Shut up, she snapped. I don't need advice. I need information. Eric was an old friend of Scott's, a guy he used to play poker with, grab beers with, talk about work with. Scott trusted him, which meant, if anyone had a clue where he might be, it was Eric. There was silence on the other end. Amanda pressed harder. He sold the house, sold the business, and cut me off. But Scott's not the type to just vanish. He's somewhere, and I know you know where. Eric let out a slow, irritated breath. Amanda, even if I did. Her patience snapped. You owe me, Eric. That did it. A tense pause. Amanda smirked. Eric had history with her, one that Scott never knew about. And Eric? He wasn't exactly a loyal friend. Finally, he muttered, Look, I don't know exactly where he is, but... Amanda's grip on the phone tightened. But what? Another sigh. Last time we talked, he mentioned moving into a condo. Some high-rise downtown. Luxury place. Said he wanted a fresh start. Amanda's heart jumped. She had him. Which building? She demanded. Eric hesitated. Amanda leaned in. Eric, if you don't tell me, I swear to. Crescent Tower. Amanda's pulse spiked. That was all she needed. She hung up without a word, tossed her phone onto the passenger seat, and slammed her foot on the gas. Scott thought he was safe, that he could just erase her and walk away. Wrong. Amanda was on her way, and she wasn't leaving without a fight. Scott stood on the balcony of his new life, the city stretching out beneath him in a glittering sea of lights. The air was crisp, quiet. No yelling. No demands. Just freedom. He took a slow sip of whiskey, letting the warmth settle in his chest. Then, a buzz from his burner phone. Lisa. He sighed, setting his glass down before answering. Tell me she's given up, he said dryly. Lisa's voice was sharp. No. She found you. Scott's blood ran cold. What? Your idiot friend Eric sold you out, Lisa muttered. She's on her way. You've got maybe 15 minutes. Scott exhaled through his nose, jaw clenching. Of course, Amanda never lost. Not without a final battle. Scott set down his drink, stepped inside, and grabbed his bag. The condo was temporary, a place to lay low while everything settled. He hadn't unpacked much. Good. He wasn't planning on staying. He had anticipated this. Amanda wasn't the type to let go. And Scott? He wasn't the type to stick around and let her win. A sharp knock on the door. Then another. Louder. Scott smirked. Right on time. Scott. Amanda's voice. Furious. Shaking. Desperate. You open this door right now. Scott didn't move. Instead, he walked to the small desk by the window, pulled out a single manila envelope, and slid it under the door. Silence. Then rustling. A pause. A sharp, ragged breath, and then a scream of rage. Scott chuckled. Inside the envelope, the final divorce papers. Signed, sealed, delivered. Amanda had spent years controlling him. But now, Scott had the last word. Without hesitation, he slung his bag over his shoulder, slipped out the side exit, and walked toward his waiting car. Amanda could scream. She could fight. She could curse his name. But it didn't matter. Scott was already gone.